Welcome to the West Coast Speakeasy, Vancouver Island's finest.
Welcome to the West Coast Speakeasy, everyone. I'm here today with Ted Smith. Lots of you people probably already know who he is, but for those who don't, he's the founder of the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club here in Victoria, one of the longest standing compassion clubs in Canada. So thank you very much for coming, Ted.
Thank you for having me on the show, Jeremy.
Much appreciated. I know you're probably very busy at the moment with everything you guys have going on, and I think we'll get to that. But if you just wanted to maybe start by letting people know why you started the organization originally, and maybe a couple highlights just on the maybe the legal battles or the raids, the different things you've had to deal with over the years, just so people can get an idea of what you had to deal with.
Okay,
Sure.
thanks.
Sure.
Okay, so I graduated from Wilfrid Laurier University in Ontario with the philosophy degree, economics background, and moved here to start writing.
Mm.
Didn't know what, but I came across a group called Hempology 101 in Vancouver that did education about hemp and cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm seven generation farmer on both sides. So originally, I got into it more for hemp to educate people about all the different uses of hemp seed and hemp fiber and
Mm-hmm.
all the other things that it can be good for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to write a book for Hempology 101 about the history and uses of cannabis, and then moved to Victoria, where I started to meet uh, people that used cannabis as medicine. Started to hear about the San Francisco Cannabis Buyers Club down in the States that was helping people with AIDS
Mm-hmm.
predominantly,
Mm-hmm.
and started to learn more about the medical benefits of cannabis. So at that point, I met a baker who made cookies and topicals using cannabis and sold a lot of them to people with AIDS that were
Mm-hmm.
really helping them out
Mm-hmm.
dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, we started up the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club. We decided to help people with essentially incurable medical problems, physical initially. Eventually, it became inclusive for medical or mental health issues as well. But originally, it was meant for sort of like chronic physical pain
Mm-hmm.
sort of ailments. And so, yeah, I lived in a van. I got a pager and a pamphlet and started to help people in town. Uh, Took a few years before I started to get arrested. It seemed inevitable when I began. My first arrests were actually giving out joints up at UVic at a 420, and then
Okay.
pot cookies downtown at a rally.
Right.
Eventually, I was convicted of trafficking in both those cases, but they just made me more infamous. And so we got a store for the Buyers Club in 2001, started to get raided in 2002. So we went through four raids between 2002 and 2003,
Mm-hmm.
eventually beating every single charge in court using
Mm-hmm.
different constitutional charges or challenges. Then in 2009, my bakery got raided in town. So we fought that to the Supreme Court of Canada. In 2015, we won a unanimous decision that made cannabis edibles and extracts legal for patients across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the final straw in prohibition. So at that point, the Liberal government picked up legalization and decided to force that through rather quickly and
Mm-hmm.
really with no thought towards medical cannabis. It was all about making money off recreational.
Mm-hmm.
And so the club couldn't comply. Um, in the meantime, I'd actually fallen in love with one of the members, and then while we were going to the Supreme Court of Canada, she died of cancer, and
Oh wow.
I quit my activism and everything in the public for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But then, with the threat of legalization and our club not doing well without me, I came back.
Right.
And then we started to get raided. So there's been four raids now since legalization. The last one just a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
We were fined $3.2 million and evicted from the location we were in for over 20 years. Found a new home. We've been raided twice now in the new home, and now the province has applied for civil forfeiture to take that building from the landlord. They've also put a lien against my girlfriend's home. She's on the board of directors for the $3.2 million. And so we've gotten another eviction notice from this landlord, which we are contesting in court. and I'm literally watching my phone right now to get a
Mhm.
court date, which hopefully will be as early as next week, to try and get an injunction against the landlord, which will hopefully keep the province at bay until we get to court.
Right. Wow.
So that's a summary.
Big summary. And so, with everything going on right now, what are your chances of you think being able to stay in your location?
Oh, I'm very hopeful
Yeah.
that we'll be able to at least get this temporary injunction
Mm-hmm.
until a full constitutional hearing can be
Mm-hmm.
heard,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been trying to get to court with the province for years with judicial review and a
Mm-hmm.
lawsuit and an injunction against the province, but
Right.
it's been very frustrating. We've been dealing with administrative hearings and administrative law within the Solicitor General's office. We haven't been charged with any criminal offenses. We haven't had a chance to go to court in normal circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Thus far, we've had our constitutional rights stripped from us, actually, in our
Right.
arguments. So it's been, very frustrating. Uh, but we've been, standing our ground, and
Mm-hmm.
I have great faith in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's just a matter of whether we can survive until we get our day in court.
Right. And so, and it does seem like we were just talking. You have had some support from Marion Alto and various other people. So there are some influential people behind you. It seems like, at least.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
letter was really clear about how we just want our fair day in court,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're not asking for any, kind of, in a sense, special consideration,
Right.
except to be left to stay alive so
Mm-hmm.
we can continue helping patients
Right.
until a hearing can and a judge can determine whether or not, we have adequate arguments, which
Mm-hmm.
we've done before, and I'm confident we have the evidence and arguments to do again,
Right. Okay. Well, hopefully it all works out,
right?
and you guys can stay open. And in terms of the patients and the members that you have, so who would make up the majority of the? Because there's what, 8 or 9 thousand people at this point.
Over the 30 years now,
Oh,
yeah, there's
okay. Yep.
been 9,000. I think right now it's about 2,500 in terms of active membership.
Active members. Right.
In terms of how many come in every month for
Mm-hmm.
medicine. Probably, chronic pain would be the main uh, benefit that
Mm-hmm.
patients are seek or trying, or main problem patients are trying to address when they come into our club.
Mm-hmm.
That could be for, back pain or some type of injury, or
Mm-hmm.
even pain associated with the disease, whether it's, cancer or irritable bowel syndrome. A lot of conditions are very painful.
Mm-hmm.
And so eating cannabis in particular is really good for controlling pain. A
Right.
lot of times when people think about cannabis as medicine, they think it's people smoking a joint, when
Mm-hmm.
really that's kind of the last resort. There's so many other better alternatives to using cannabis as medicine, especially high dose edibles.
Right.
And so we have a lot of cancer patients as well that
Mm-hmm.
come to our club, because we have high dose edibles and really specialize in products that
Mm-hmm.
are made for them.
Right.
Um, certainly, a lot of our members have multiple issues. So, their primary issue might be chronic pain, but a lot of them have, anxiety and sleep problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, cannabis, especially eating again for
Mm-hmm.
getting a long sleep,
Mm-hmm.
the combination of smoking a joint to fall asleep, but having a capsule in your system to stay asleep for hours
Mm-hmm.
is a really, great 1-2 sort of combination. So,
Right.
um, yeah, so, and then, there's just a range of other conditions that patients are coming in for, from, PTSD to irritable bowel syndromes and Crohn's disease.
Mm-hmm.
Fibromyalgia is actually a very common
Right.
issue that a lot of ladies are coming in with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, almost any major condition that you know of, the endocannabinoid system, helps modulate. And so by using cannabis to kind of complement what our body is already using to control a lot of different systems,
Mm-hmm.
is why cannabis seems to be this, like, you know, uh, amazing medicine for all the things, because it really does complement what our body's already doing.
Right.
And so, yeah, but chronic pain would definitely be the most common.
Right. Okay. And so, could you talk about Health Canada's medical cannabis framework? Because I think perhaps people might think that it's not that difficult to access cannabis medically if they have a condition such as you're talking about with chronic pain or cancer. So what is the problem with the framework, in your opinion, and where are the gaps that you're filling really for people?
Fair. Well, from the very beginning, Health Canada's resented cannabis being considered medicine.
Mm,
The courts forced it upon them. It wasn't because they agreed to it.
mm-hmm.
And so initially, the regulations allowed a patient to grow their own or have a designated caregiver,
Right.
but that was it. There
Right.
wasn't even a place to purchase it.
Mm-hmm.
We've had to fight in court tooth and nail for one thing after the next.
Okay.
In fact, up to 2015, Health Canada argued the only safe and effective way to use cannabis as medicine was to smoke it.
Right.
And so, they've really, fought tooth and nail and had a very limited program. For example, it's mail order only
Mm-hmm.
when they did start to allow people to purchase cannabis from, large companies and producers.
Right.
And so, for the average middle class person, that might not seem like a huge barrier. You have a home, you have a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people that don't have those opportunities. There
Right.
are people with, head injuries, mental health issues, elderly people that aren't really that um, media or social media savvy, so they're not getting on their phone
Right.
and purchasing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so even if you can find a doctor, because you have to have a doctor to sign up to the program,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge catch-22 because there's no real DIN number for cannabis products.
Right.
Most cannabis products, except for synthetic THC, haven't gone through the drug approval process.
Mm-hmm.
So doctors don't know anything about it. They, especially edible cannabis, they barely know anything about smoking it.
Right.
And so they've never been trained in it. They have no questions in their medical exam to become a doctor about the endocannabinoid system. They're just completely ignorant of the plant and its effects. And so Health Canada from the beginning has required doctors to authorize it,
Mm-hmm.
not prescribe it, because
Right.
they can't. They don't have a DIN number. But they
Right.
can allow patients to use what the patients tell them they need,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they don't have any clue about dosage. So they just write down on a piece of paper what they think or what the patient tells them
Right.
is required.
Mm-hmm.
But in the case of edibles, it's completely uh, inadequate because they try to get doctors to prescribe the dried grams per day a patient needs
Okay.
when it needs to be converted into milligrams because patients that eat cannabis don't eat it by the gram, they eat the milligrams of THC. That's what they
Mm-hmm.
go by.
Mm-hmm.
And so the system's not designed for patients to really use it as medicine. And the justification for having mail order and not brick and mortar storefronts historically was that recreational consumers would gain access to it. But now that cannabis is legal, that argument no longer holds water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their argument for really opening up the medical marijuana program is that if they allowed patients to pay less than recreational consumers would be forcing their way into the medical program. And so right now, a cancer patient in palliative care doesn't pay any less than a 20-year-old walking into a recreational store. In fact, if you sign up to the medical marijuana program
Mm-hmm.
and purchase things online like they tell you to,
Mm-hmm.
it's more expensive for the same product than it would be to walk into a recreational store.
Is that because of the delivery or
No,
no?
gouging.
Okay.
The reason that, because they don't want to give incentive for people to sign up to the medical marijuana program, because then recreational consumers will get in. But also, the only people signed up to the federal medical program right now
Mm-hmm.
are either people that are growing their own, because it's a lot better if you can grow your own. You can,
Mm-hmm.
get a lot more and
Mm-hmm.
have high quality medicine, make your own edibles. That's obvious. But the other one is veterans.
Right.
Veterans are actually getting it paid for by their insurance company. Nobody else can. But if a veteran signs up to the program, the insurance company will pay a certain amount of money to
Mm-hmm.
these companies for their medicine. These companies have no incentive to drop their prices.
Mm-hmm.
They're making good money off these insurance companies.
Right.
So that's the bulk of their medical marijuana consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And the veterans aren't, you know, bargaining about low prices because they get it paid for.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's this, collusion amongst, the industry to keep their prices for medical marijuana higher, and the government is not doing anything to incentivize, it being cheaper or more accessible to patients at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the lack of storefronts means that, patients don't get good information about medical marijuana. They're using Dr. Google,
Right.
right? And if you walk into a recreational store, if you have cancer, you can't ask any questions about what to use or how to use it to fight your
Mm-hmm.
cancers. They're just not allowed to say that.
Right.
And so, we need to be able to provide information to our patients as their conditions and lives progress. And it's something that we think is completely unfair, that there aren't registered cannabis nurses that could be employed in stores that could give information and advice. And,
Right.
you know,
So I have seen just from like a cursory search online that there are, so at least it appeared to be, there are some resources where you can have a consultate, like a free consultation booked, and there are doctors and nurses who will talk to you about whether or not you actually could get medical cannabis. Are the guidelines very strict then, in terms of whether just your average person suffering from something very serious, like you're saying, like chronic pain or cancer, is it very hard for them to access medical cannabis at this stage?
it's not as hard, for people, like I say, that have phones and they're, good with
Right.
the internet, to sign up to the program now. Like, it's hard for a lot of people to find doctors at all,
Yeah.
and most doctors are not pro medical marijuana. So,
Hmm.
most people that want to use this legally are forced to go to one of these like online, free signups that are typically tied to one of these licensed producers that are
Hmm.
trying to sell products. And so, getting into the program is one thing, but
The cost is also another.
the consultation is, the initial one. I don't know how many of them give ongoing consults
Right.
and how familiar they are with the products that they're, providing.
Hmm.
And so, that, is available again, kind of online to people.
Hmm.
But the vast majority of people that use cannabis as medicine aren't accessing the legal medical marijuana program. There's a couple 10,000, or not 10, like I think maybe 40,000 now that are signed up.
Okay.
Again, primarily veterans, but there's millions of Canadians that are using cannabis as medicine right now that are just going into recreational stores because the medical program just isn't worth the time and effort for them, especially if there's no economic incentive and it's more expensive to get it delivered online when you can buy the same products cheaper down the street.
Right. And so, how
Um,
prohibitive is the cost at this point for a lot of people?
well, that's another factor. And I haven't touched on the high dose edibles either, which aren't
Yeah.
allowed in the system.
Hmm.
And so when it comes to the smoked cannabis, actually the price and cost isn't that much different anymore.
Hmm.
Initially, it was. We'd like to think our products are, fresher and better, and
Hmm.
grown by small mom and pop growers that are
Hmm.
growing it as medicine. So there's a certain benefit to that. But
Yeah.
really, cost wise, there isn't as much of a difference as there was initially. However, when you switch over to the edible products that we provide,
Hmm.
the cost difference is, dramatic. For example, our cookies we sell for $3.
Hmm.
They got about 75 milligrams in them.
Yeah.
A legal store has a 10 milligram limit. They're typically about $10 for a cookie of that strength.
Right.
So you'd have to pay $70, $80 in a legal store and eat 7 or 8 little cookies to
Right.
get the same effect as you
Hmm.
would in our
Hmm.
one cookie for $3.
Yeah.
For a lot of patients that use a cookie a day to go to sleep, that's just completely unaffordable.
Hmm.
$3 a day, that's like $100 a month.
Yeah.
$70 a day is just like far
Oh,
too
that of
much,
course. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So that's a really easy example to use. But yeah, we have products that are up to 750 milligrams, 500 milligram gummies that cost about, I think they're $15. And so that's substantially. And then I guess another good example is our suppositories.
Hmm.
We have suppositories that have 250 milligrams in them. A legal suppository would be 10.
Right.
We have cancer patients that have learned if they use 1,000 milligrams a day, they might be able to kill the cancer. A lot of people have done that. There's no research being done on it though, because there's no pharmaceutical company can make money off it,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't matter if it's a specific cannabinoid that or group
Mm-hmm.
that kills the cancer, because they can all do it. So, but anyway, there's a lot of cancer patients that are using 4 of these 250 milligram suppositories that we charge $9 for. And if you were to try and use legal products, you'd be using literally 100 suppositories a day.
Right,
And
of course. Yeah.
I don't even know what they're charging for suppositories in the legal market, but I can imagine it'd be a lot more than what we are.
Are those offered on the legal market
Good luck
even?
finding them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're not in recreational stores. There's a couple companies online that sell
Right. So with stuff like that, where you're offering something that doesn't even exist in the legal market or framework at all, how do you assess the safety and the effectiveness of all of those of offering them, and like where would the information or research where are you getting your information from about how to offer those products to people?
Well, product development is actually one of the most exciting things we do.
Hmm.
In fact, it's been fun in a sense through all these raids and stress lately. We've even been developing our new suppository that's fairly high dose, around 200 milligrams, but it's got this perfect ratio of CBD to THC, because we've learned, especially to fight cancer, having a 4-to-1 ratio is really the most effective. And so
So you're developing that yourself?
we just put them out on the shelf just a couple weeks ago,
Right.
while we've been dealing with all this other stresses. Because
Hmm.
honestly, like, providing really high quality products that patients can't find anywhere else is what we live for.
Hmm.
And so these are essentially cancer killers in a lot of ways. And yeah, we have been able to provide them at a pretty inexpensive price as well. I can't even remember right now. But yeah, it's something that we do in-house testing. Um, we do research online. It's there's a small group of us that do
Hmm.
the product development.
Hmm.
But in a lot of ways, cannabis is one of the safest medicines to use.
Hmm.
Like, the only reason that they don't allow for high dosage edibles is because of the kids. It's not because there's any real, you know, things they have to worry about that are different than any other, prescription drug. There's a lot more dangerous drugs out
Hmm.
there than the 100 milligram suppositories, but they won't allow that because they think it could get in the hands of a kid.
Right.
And so it's very frustrating to have such a safe, effective medicine that can be very helpful for
Hmm.
dealing with chronic pains and cancers. It's a
Hmm.
very effective opioid replacement. When it's used as a suppository, it doesn't break down as quickly, so it helps fight the pain and cancer and stuff a lot longer. But these things just aren't being made available at all.
Right. And so do you have any medical or ex-medical professionals on your team? Or, yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to sort of just get at in terms of how do you establish, or when you're making recommendations to people or creating a plan for them, is it all sort of personal experience, or how are you creating these plans for people and what you're recommending to them?
Fair.
Mm,
Well, we do have a pharmacist on our team.
mm-hmm.
So he helps us in two aspects. He helps screen new members to confirm that they had or have a legitimate medical issue that would
Right.
qualify them for their club. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of having a doctor screening our patients, we're using a pharmacist. We think that's adequate.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also helping us with drug interactions, because especially actually with CBD, there's some concerns about how cannabis and CBD interacts with the liver and breaking down other drugs, some
Mm-hmm.
blood thinners and some anti-seizure drugs in particular. So he helps us with that. But when it comes to using the medicine itself, we're the experts. Pretty much everyone that works there is a patient. And doing new signups, we typically have the most senior of our staff that do the sign up. I do as many as I can myself.
Right.
And it's very individual,
Mm-hmm.
because we have some patients that come in, all the experience in the world. They've made the products, they know things and what they want to get. And we can show them some maybe new things that we have, or, teach them a couple things. But um, there can be other people come in that know virtually nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Elderly patients that come in with cancers and things, and this
Mm-hmm.
is the last resort, and they're even scared, but they understand that this is helpful. Like, sometimes they'll try something from a person and be like, okay, actually that really helped, so maybe I will go down there
Mm-hmm.
and check it out. And so it's something that with each new patient when they come in, we do a sign up that takes at least 20 minutes, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes longer if there's lots of questions. And
Right.
we've got like 70 or 80 products that we make and show people. So, it can take some time, especially for newcomers to
Mm-hmm.
understand. It's usually a bit of an experiment when people join, partly because we have so many options
Mm-hmm.
and people are so different with their tolerance, with their pain level, with their finances. So there's several factors that we need to think of when we consider where to start.
Mm-hmm.
We usually lowball people and start, especially inexperienced, and start them as low as we think we can to
Mm-hmm.
be able to start helping, and then we'll work them up as they become familiar with the effects and more comfortable with the intoxicating effects, if that's a concern. Because most of the people that come in, we get lots of patients that come in, maybe like 25% that are in this boat where it's like they don't like to get intoxicated in any way.
Right.
They don't drink, they don't do nothing, but
Mm-hmm.
like they want to feel better,
Yeah.
right? That's where they're at. So
Mm-hmm.
we walk them through. We have lots of CBD options as well,
Right.
and it's everyone's different. Like everyone, there's different things people sometimes start in the morning with, right? So you may start them with some CBD products in the morning, and then maybe, or some sativa to get them going but not sedate them in any way, and then in the evening we may switch over to a higher dose indica product to help them relax and sleep more.
Mm-hmm.
There's people with their kids, for example, don't want to be intoxicated, they want to be functional.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to find that right balance, but it's very individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no cookie cutter, like this is going to work for you. Some people come in and it's like the little 5 milligram capsules are just the ticket, and other people come in and those 500 milligram gummies are going down their throat every day. Like,
Right.
you know,
So with the high dose stuff, because I mean, I've been taking edibles for years and stuff like that. For me, a couple milligrams is
mhm,
fine. I get pretty high off that, so I
yep.
can't imagine a 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams. Like for me, that would
Well,
I'd be high
fair.
for a week, right?
There are some other factors people don't consider.
Mm.
Genetics.
Right.
It's a lot more of a factor than we've considered.
Mm-hmm.
It's much like alcohol, where some people can just pour it down their throat, but some people just take a glass of wine
Mm-hmm.
and they're tipsy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another interesting factor that actually affects me is gut health.
Right.
So I've got a bacteria in my stomach that's actually eating through my stomach lining. It'll give me arthritis if I eat too much sugar and a couple other things.
Mm-hmm.
But cannabis is an antibacteria. So if I eat a cannabis capsule, it just dissolves in my stomach, fighting that bacteria. It never even gets into my bloodstream.
Right.
And so a lot of people have bad health in their guts, and they just don't realize it because their stomach doesn't hurt. My
Mm-hmm.
tummy doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I've just learned through some tests that actually it's this bacteria
Mm-hmm.
that's the cause of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I can eat hundreds of milligrams of THC, and it's not
Right.
because of my tolerance level; it's because of my poor gut health.
Right.
And that actually goes for a lot of people that they just don't realize how bad their stomach is, and they think that they just aren't being affected. But if they do a suppository, that'll be a different effect for them because it's
Mm-hmm.
a different route.
And so with the high dosages, is that the usefulness there is just the strength for pain relief, or what's the general benefit of these really high dosages?
Well, certainly the way cannabis calms the nerves down is incredible for pain relief. Um, but it's also an anti-inflammatory. It's a muscle relaxant.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times people's pain are because of inflammation. And so if you eat cannabis, 3, 4 times a day and you get that inflammation down, then the pain doesn't spike and pick up, especially if you're relaxing the muscles, bringing down the inflammation and helping your nerves calm down all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you get, the pain under control. But if it's, degenerative back problems or some other serious issue that's causing the pain, then you just need to be constantly dosing that and staying on top of it. And so, that's its main use in the high dose edibles, but also as a cancer killer. THC attaches itself to a cancer cell, and then they dissolve each other. So there's been many cases of people that have been able to kill their cancers entirely, or reduce the tumors, and
Mm-hmm.
or prolong their lives And so I've seen it with my love Gail when she passed away. She was at one point in a hospital dying, and finally got her on fentanyl, which wasn't as bad as some of the other opioids. But it wasn't until we got her cannabis suppositories that she could start to eat it all and
Hmm.
start to get capsules into her. And she lived 2 years past her expiry date, let's
Right.
say, by using cannabis suppositories.
Is there any
And so,
research on stuff like the suppositories, or just in for cancer treatment in general?
no, they don't want to do research on whole plant medicines. They want to study synthetic drugs and very isolated chemicals so that they can sell them.
Hmm.
But they don't want to profit off something that another person or company could make a very similar product to. And that's the thing about cannabis, is that, like, if you patent one specific strain, there could be another strain almost identical to it, that has almost the very same medical benefits that someone could sell. And so no one's trying to do this research at all. The government's not putting any effort into it. This should be the number one um, tool in the toolbox for harm reduction.
Hmm.
Instead of patients being given opioids post surgery, they should be given cannabis products. In palliative care, this should be the number one tool. Instead of getting all these people doped up on opioids, they should be giving them cannabis cookies every day. But it's not. They, there's no incentive from pharmaceutical companies. The government's got a complete stigma and bias against it, and they're forcing people to pay, top dollar, like they're recreational consumers, to use a medicine so that they don't have to use prescription drugs that they would be using otherwise. So it's just very frustrating how little effort is being put into uh, considering cannabis high doses, here in Canada at least.
Hmm. Yeah, it certainly seems like it would warrant more research and more investigation
Right?
for sure. Yeah, and sorry, with the quality control of everything you guys are making as well. So yeah, how do you ensure that the dosages and just that the quality is kind of standard across? Are you making everything, or are you getting a lot of these products from third parties?
We only get a couple things from third parties.
Hmm.
Our chocolate bars and gummies, and one of our oils, maybe a couple, yeah, two of our oils, I guess.
Hmm.
But we do have our own kitchen, so that really helps us keep things under control, both with the quality and price of the ingredients. We
Hmm.
sell a lot of organic products and things like that.
Right.
Um, and so I've been thinking lately I should probably even just go and do some visits in our other producers' homes, so that I could, just assure people that, they're being done under, really the primary concern we have is food safe.
Hmm.
Cannabis
Yeah.
isn't that dangerous of a drug. So, like, we don't have to worry about cross contamination in a way that you might have to in another laboratory.
Right.
In fact, if you have two different strains of cannabis mixed up into a product, it's going to have a better medical effect than a single dose or a
Hmm.
single strain product. So, but obviously, we don't mix our food ingredients up. We have our kitchen, completely food safe. Honestly, it's done in my home with my girlfriend, so I have a good idea of how
Oh,
it's
right.
being done. I
Right.
bagged up cookies and brownies last night.
Right.
So, again, we're very cautious. Every one of our patients is sick. They could get, cold or flu if we're not careful very quickly, at least, or something else. But, we're, pretty cautious about that. And, the consistency, honestly, it's fairly easy. It's plant medicine here.
Mm.
So, you know, it's something that, weighing up and measuring, these things for the most part isn't very difficult at all. A couple of the measurements with rosin are a little tricky because it's such sticky stuff because rosin's one of the extracts that we use in our suppositories.
Right.
It has no solvents at all, so we really like it. No
Hmm.
alcohol or any residual kind of solvents. So, yeah, so, there's a couple things that are just a little trickier to measure, but um, in a way, cannabis is both relatively safe, and if we're within a couple milligrams of what we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be tolerated, and
Hmm.
so yeah, we've had a pretty good track record that way.
Hmm.
But that's one reason why I pretty much insist on having our own kitchen. It's unnerving taking products from other places, but
Right, and that way you can control everything a lot better.
Mhm.
Mm. And with the storefront that you guys have, I know you have like a space for safe consumption and that kind of thing. And I've heard you talk about the community aspect, and that's one of the reasons why you think it's so valuable. So can you just talk about, um, yeah, maybe the safe consumption space that you have, and then just why you think the community aspect is so helpful for people.
Fair. Yeah. Well, from the very beginning, it was a club, and it was meant to be more than just a source of cannabis, but a place for people to gather and bond.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we've been very fortunate to have both on Johnson Street and now here spaces that our landlords have helped us provide for people to do that. And a lot of our patients are um, living at home alone. They're not able to work. Like probably 70% of our patients aren't working anymore. So they're isolated. They're
Mm-hmm.
typically not engaged in a lot of community activities and have a hard time connecting. When you're disabled, um, it's hard to relate to people.
Mm-hmm.
But in our club, people have been able to bond and help each other out with, where to get free food or how to fight their landlord or find some other housing or,
Mm-hmm.
or just to help pass the day and play some games and spend some quality time with people rather than sitting at home alone watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the lounge there that's open, while store hours are open, but we also do a lot of other events in the evenings. We have a monthly potluck games night. We have other activities that we do, at least one other event a month, things like a euchre tournament, a crib tournament, a Yahtzee tournament, or we have a picnic and a beach cleaning day that we do through the summer, and just all sorts of other events that people can just kind of get out and uh, do things with other people that have different types of issues. But yeah, there's a certain camaraderie that comes with that.
Mm-hmm. And so with the safe consumption there, it's just basically a lounge idea kind of thing, or like some couches, or I don't know,
Sure.
and then yeah, I guess how does that usually work? People will just take their dose and basically spend a couple hours there, kind of thing, or
Well, we have a volunteer watching the room all the time.
mm-hmm.
So I saw your records. We actually have a big record collection
Oh,
there that
okay,
they're
nice.
constantly keeping the tunes going.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, there's comfy chairs and stuff around where people can sit and hang out as long as they like. We got
Mm-hmm.
Wi-Fi if people want to sit. Some people come and do work and stuff like that on their computer, trying to get jobs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's lots of games go on. So there's quite often, Scrabble or uh, lots of card games being played there and stuff like that. So um, there's, usually, people hanging out doing that. Some people are not that socially adjusted, and honestly, coming and sitting in the corner smoking a joint by themselves is as
Right.
much of contact that they can deal with
Mm-hmm.
on some days. So
Mm-hmm.
there's usually a few people just kind of sitting, lurking in a corner,
Right.
um, and yeah, some people just come and have a toke and leave, but some people do stay for a while and hang.
Right. And do you have people that are coming there every day?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like I say, this is a family for a lot of folks. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's especially our volunteers. This is yeah, our home.
Yeah, right. And so you switched over to a nonprofit, right? It was 2010 or 2012.
2012, that
Well,
was an interesting year. So that was the year we first won with the case that eventually went to the Supreme Court of Canada. So we won a lower court decision that year that
mm-hmm,
made cannabis edibles and extracts legal in British Columbia
mm-hmm,
at the time. And so, yeah, I even published my textbook, Hempology 101, that year and was going on a book tour. And then after the court case, I had Revenue Canada show up at the club looking for their taxes
right.
because they found out I wasn't paying any. And so I was happy. They were really confused because normally people that they come after aren't very happy when they show up.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, this is great. You guys are coming here for your tax money.
Mm-hmm.
The police even sent them here. So I'm like, okay, well, if the police aren't going to raid us anymore because we're medical
Mm-hmm.
and all we got to do is pay our taxes, I'm like, this is becoming legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we're going to turn this into a nonprofit society.
Right.
So I actually declared bankruptcy against all the old back taxes, and we became, compliant with taxes, when we turned the club into a nonprofit in 2012.
Right.
And one of the interesting impacts of that was that when the media uh, and Times Columnist, wrote about how we were paying our taxes in such a way, it really burst the dam open for dispensaries in Victoria, Vancouver, and other cities across BC and eventually Canada, because it became known that there is a significant flaw with Health Canada's programs, that they were allowing smoked cannabis but not edibles. And it was clear
Right.
to everybody that
Mhm.
edibles should be a part of the program,
Mm-hmm.
and that this court case was going to change the law.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cities of Vancouver and Victoria actually started to license and rezone illegal cannabis dispensaries under the Harper government, which was not a pro cannabis government at all.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I think there's over 100 dispensaries that were zoned and licensed in Vancouver, around 50 here in Victoria, that were completely illegal. But the
Mm-hmm.
cities were working with them because there was this gap in law
Mm-hmm.
that, like I say, in 2012, this article just kind of like gave everyone the green light. It's like, hey, you sell medical, pay your taxes, they're letting you go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the floodgates sort of opened. And so by the time we won our court case in 2015, there were well over 1,000 illegal dispensaries across Canada illegally operating. And so it's in most major cities, Toronto is just flooded with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, the Liberals won an election the next year, and having legalization on the platform just seemed inevitable because
Mm-hmm.
it was already quasi legal. So why not,
Yeah.
take it to that next level?
Mm. Wow. And what do you think about all the gray area stuff that exists right now? So I think, I mean, I know there's lots of websites, there's different ordering services. I was actually in Toronto a couple weeks ago, and they have 24-hour dispensaries there now
Right?
that are totally illegal.
Yeah.
So what do you
Well, and all the
think?
First Nations dispensaries. Like, did you
Right.
read?
So even here, there would be ones that have like much higher doses
Oh yeah, like
of
I've been to
products.
some out in the Saanich Peninsula.
Hmm.
They're up island. Certainly, there's something called the Green Mile in Vernon, where
Okay.
as soon as you get on the reserve, it's like store after store after store.
Right.
And there's a lot of reserves across Canada that are just full of the illegal cannabis stores because people are driving from the cities
Hmm.
to get them because they have high dose edibles that they can't get elsewhere.
So generally, do you look at those positively, or are there some risks just in terms of not knowing where the products are coming from? Maybe the oversight's not, done in the same way that you would, for example, where you're actually
Right?
making it in a kitchen, that kind of stuff. Yeah, because you really would have no idea where anything's actually being sourced, right?
Exactly, right? Like,
Yeah.
patients have uh, no recourse if there's something wrong with the product. Like we have a storefront, we trade people back another medicine if something doesn't work for whatever reason, right? Like we're
Hmm.
completely responsible for anything that goes out of our doors. Whereas like a website that people purchase from, there's no backup there at all. And so, yeah, it's really sad that this is happening, but it's because of the restrictions that the government's put down in the first place. If they had really intended to eradicate the illegal industry, they would have included it instead of pushing it aside and trying to replace it with a much more expensive regulated system
Hmm.
that doesn't even allow for the sale of a lot of products that people have demanded for years. It's not like high dose edibles just showed up.
Of
We've been
course. Yeah.
selling these 75 milligram cookies for 30 years now,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, and patients were accustomed to that when legalization hit. And in fact, the first year of legalization, edibles weren't even allowed to be sold.
Right.
So where did they expect people to go? Just not to buy it for a while and until they had their low dose stuff available again?
Hmm.
So the way that it was set up and implemented pushed people to the black markets where they're going to stay if the prices and quality are better than what's legally available. And so, the reason that these illegal producers and sellers are allowed to continue is simply because the government's gouging so much in their taxes and their regulations that they're allowing almost this big industry to continue, and it's not going to disappear until they change those regulations and lower the taxes,
Mm-hmm.
because people that need to use this every day can't afford to go to recreational stores.
Right.
Even people that smoke, it's like, pretty expensive. And so, they need to, do a lot better job of designing the medical marijuana program and providing it to patients at a lower price, or they're going to go to places that they can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's not just a matter of choice. Like, people that have limited incomes have no choice. It's either get their medicine or don't get their medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's an illegal source, fine. At
Right.
least they're getting their medicine.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and and if and if it would cost you a couple $100 a month or something, I can understand why that's just too much for plenty of people,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think a person on disability has about $8 a day to spend on themselves with their checks on average.
Right. Yeah. I mean, totally depending
Like,
on their situation, but yeah, it could be very prohibitive. I could see that.
mhm,
So, what changes would you make to the medical framework then, if it was up to you?
fair. Well, the first would be we need a national registered cannabis nurse. So we need to have people that can work in facilities like ours, or just even in a recreational store, that can provide medical marijuana information
Mm-hmm.
and explain how the products work, and such to patients. Um, and so, you know, uh, that would be something that would, deal with this whole storefront problem that we have, because without being able to provide medical information to our patients, we would just be another store.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we would need to do some research on high dose edibles. We realize that they can't be just sold just to everyone right away, that more research needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do it.
Yeah.
We could have, cannabis nurses that sign patients up to these high dose edible programs, collect information on them, and do our very best to make sure the products are not kid friendly in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Like suppositories and the packaging and such for, different capsules and things.
Yeah.
They don't have to be made in ways that are appealing to kids at all. And so I think that doing that research is critical
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. But we know what the general results are going to be. That it's a very safe medicine. We've been selling it like this for years.
Right.
But we would like some more data as well. We'd like to even get into some specifics about certain strains of cancer fighting, or certain strains of cannabis fighting certain types of cancers. Right?
Right.
Like, there's so much research that
Mm-hmm.
we would like to get into, but most of the research being done on cannabis right now is trying to look into the negative impacts and its impacts on kids, and
Right.
how many, and it's very frustrating that there's virtually no research being done on the medical benefits at all, and just on all the potential negative impacts.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like it would be really useful to have a lot more research, and because at this point too, within the medical framework, insurance does not necessarily cover the cost for people, right? I mean, even if you can get a medical, receive it medically, you may be paying full price, or is it just like a small percentage covered, or is it not typical for insurance to cover it all?
Oh, insurance doesn't cover it all unless you're on or a veteran.
Right.
And some companies have got different programs to try to give people discounts if they're
Mm-hmm.
able to prove they're on disability and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's still, especially for the edibles, like I say, just much more expensive in the legal system. So
Right. Right.
there's not much incentive to do that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems problematic. Definitely.
right?
Yeah. And I know you've got some ideas for using cannabis in palliative care. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, well, like I say, my experience with Gail was very intense, and we weren't able to save her life. The cancer, um, was pretty pretty aggressive. But I was able to see how the suppositories and eating the cannabis were able to help with her pain levels, help with her anxiety, and didn't have the negative effects that the opioids would have. And so while I cared for her in the 2 years, we were able to, at certain points, decrease the use of the fentanyl um, with using the cannabis oils. And yeah, it was really, it was an intense couple of years. I know I keep saying that. But, I could see very clearly how the cannabis oils were helping her out in that stage. And it's very frustrating to see how palliative care is done now with absolutely no um, consideration for using cannabis oils and cannabis medicines. Quite the opposite. A lot of facilities and hospitals and such, you got to sneak it in. If the medical staff find out that they're using cannabis oils, they can be treated quite harshly. Um, it's very opposite of what should be. And so, right now, um, yeah, there's zero cannabis being used in palliative care settings. Um, what we want to see eventually, once I get this store legal and our production facility online, we want to make integrated palliative care centers that have cannabis being grown right on site, that are growing strains specific to fight certain types of cancers. And we want to have a kitchen on site where we're making medicines for our patients, but also a restaurant that we can sell food and medicines to the general public and help support the facility. And then also have different healthcare providers on site, possibly dentists or certainly a nurse's station, but all, just a variety of different healthcare providers, so the public can use it as sort of a medical center, but that we could use it to focus on fighting cancers with the cannabis medicines.
So is that
Because
something you already have a like a plan for?
not in writing. I have people that want to work with me on it once I'm through this stage of my career, because it's a very important thing for many of us that have helped out our loved ones with cancers towards the end of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've helped many other people provide cannabis medicines with their loved ones through the final stages of their lives as well. And so yeah, I've heard enough stories and seen enough things myself to know that there would be a great benefit to have cannabis being the kind of the number one medicine being used in palliative care instead of the last thing they'd ever consider. Again, because it helps out with like this whole range of issues, from anxiety to pain to inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So people that are dying towards the end of life have got like a whole range of issues, and the last thing they need are to be given painkillers that kind of numb their ability to communicate with their family and their loved ones. And I know I've had lots of conversations with people that really regretted, not having cannabis more available, as they've seen loved ones pass away that would have been much better off for it. And
Mm.
personally, it's like I'm not gonna wait till I'm, facing palliative care to fight for that. Um, because right now, if you go into palliative care in most facilities, you can't have a puff, for example. You have to go outside. That's not very easy for people in bed settings to do, but
Right.
having a puff of cannabis once in a while, it can be a very beneficial thing for people that are in that state.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we need to have facilities that are accommodating for patients using this medicine rather than punishing them for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you mentioned going a legal route just a minute or two there. So is that
Yeah.
something you have a plan for that
Oh, we
then?
want to be legal for
Mm-hmm.
sure. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like this is horrible being illegal and having to fight to stay alive. Um, our plan is to do it through the courts.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, there's no avenues for us to operate. Um, you know, we don't feel like we're being listened to. We were included. Health Canada did a review of their Cannabis Act a couple years ago. We were included in that. You know, we talked about how high dose edibles were so important, and we're just told that, yeah, okay, like they're really good for you, but there's the kids, so we can't do that.
Right.
And then given a whole bunch of excuses about storefronts not being available because pharmacists don't have DIN numbers, so they don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and so they won't do anything. And so it's, you know, very frustrating to have no political willpower at all to help provide cannabis as medicine. In fact, like I say, the whole medical community really resents the courts telling them that this street drug is somehow a medicine. You know, they've hated it from the very beginning, so they're not, you know, doing anything to help in that manner. But we do see an opportunity through the courts to get an exemption um, that would temporarily allow us to operate as we are while we transition into the legal system. Transitioning our store into a legal um, model isn't that difficult if we're allowed to give information, or you know, we can have these registered cannabis nurses or some, you know, certificate that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, our staff could get that would allow us to provide the information. In a sense, you know, that doesn't seem too difficult. But the other half of our group, the production, um, we make, like I say, 70, 80 different products that would have to go through a whole bunch of different um, systems and things to become legal. Um, we would have to get expensive commercial kitchen um, and a whole bunch of equipment and things that we don't have now. Um, and so it would cost us a lot of money in order to transition our kitchen
Mm-hmm.
over. And we're a nonprofit society. We can't even get a bank account right now, let alone money to open up such a
Right.
facility. So what we would see being the path forward would be, you know, to start winning in court, getting an exemption, and then being able to start build the infrastructure and, you know, maybe obtain some government funding to be able to make the transition,
Mm-hmm.
because we can't do it just on our own. We're a small nonprofit society. We keep our prices as low as we can.
Mm-hmm.
We've had hundreds of thousands of products taken from us by the government in the last
Right.
few years. You know, we're not really in a strong financial position to be able to transition. And there have to be regulatory changes too, because they actually have rules in place that if you have a production facility, you can't own a store. So from the beginning, we would have had to choose whether we tried to keep a retail store going or whether we keep our products going somehow, even though we wouldn't have been able to sell them anywhere. Um,
Right. Because you can't do both at the same
and
time.
so, yeah, or even like a lot of them were high dose products. So like
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't make no use making our cookies because they couldn't have been sold in a legal store anyway.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so transitioning into the legal system hasn't made any sense for us at this point without just completely collapsing and leaving our patients without the medicines that they've been relying on.
Right.
So the only way that we could transition into the legal system is through the courts.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm confident that we can. You know, this whole process to legalization started through the exemption process in the courts. I have a fundamental faith in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and hope that we have a reasonable judge or two along the way here that will
Mm-hmm.
see that we are trying to comply.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have a storefront because I'm afraid of the government or I hate the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm here and have this facility and this nonprofit society because I want the world to be a better place. I want our government to function better. I
Mm-hmm.
want the rules to be in the best interest of our sick and vulnerable citizens,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you know, so, you know, it's not something that I'm trying to, you know, just get away with a crime here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to make things better for everyone.
For sure. Yeah. And so would that be what you're most hopeful about then for the future? Despite everything you've had to deal with, that hopefully there is some path forward for you being able to go legal?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I've, like I say, I've dealt with the court system extensively through these 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And can, you know, I've seen, you know, different changes happening. And so I have every reason to think that, you know, what we're wanting are reasonable
Mm-hmm.
and available
Mm-hmm.
and inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
That there will be storefront brick and mortar, stores that can
Yeah.
provide medical cannabis at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of how we get
Right.
there. And I think that, we have as good of a chance as anyone of doing that. In fact, we're very firmly rooted in our community. Our mayor and council, traditionally have supported us very strongly.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got all sorts of, connections to the city here.
Yeah.
And I feel, very, very confident in that, surviving 30 years through all this. Uh, it's something after that anniversary, I felt, okay, well, if we've lasted this long, like, we're here for good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you know what? That's really positive, and I'm glad that you're at least, despite everything you've had to deal with, you are hopeful that this could work out in the courts, and um, thanks for being so passionate about this topic and for providing these services for the public and for people who can't afford it. So, thanks very much for that. If people want to follow you at all or stay up to date on what's going on with what you're doing, where's the best place for people to take a look?
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of keeping up to date with the like daily toll, I'm posting on Facebook fairly regularly,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't have to be on Facebook to see what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm trying to do more on Instagram too. Not doing that great at times, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
Um, we have the Cannabis Digest website, which has a lot of our history on it. If people want to look up
Mm-hmm.
things like the Supreme Court of Canada fight,
Yeah.
I gotta get that letter from the mayor up there. I haven't done
Right.
that yet,
Yeah.
but we try to keep like the highlights on the Cannabis Digest site.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, those are the main ways to keep up with us.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming, Ted. Really
Oh,
enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you taking time out of, I know you're I'm sure, very busy at the moment. So thanks very much for coming by.
oh, I really appreciate the opportunity, Jeremy. It's really important for us to have chances like this to share our story and
Mm-hmm.
help people understand. Because, yeah, it's very common when people find out what's going on with this, like, well, why don't you just get a license?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that easy. It's a little more nuanced than that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's a lot more complicated and nuanced than
yeah,
people might realize.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it were that simple, we would have done it. But
Right.
yeah, so giving us a chance to really get into the nuts and bolts
Mm-hmm.
is really appreciated because a
Yeah.
lot of the interviews I do are very superficial. So
Right.
this is awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Of course.
Thanks.
The West Coast Speakeasy. Full-length episodes and clips on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Like and subscribe for more of Victoria's finest.